Start stream. Epic Gaming Night is sponsored by Tasty Minstrel Games. Make sure to check out the Tasty Minstrel podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. This podcast is made possible by the support of patrons like you. Thanks for your support. Welcome to the Epic Gaming Night podcast, a podcast about the stories and relationships board games create. I'm your host, Roy Kennedy, and with me, as always, is Matt.
Got on mute. Hello.
And Rob.
Hello, hello.
And today we have a special guest, Lance, the Undead Viking. What's going on, man?
Very little, man. I got my kids to bed in nick of time, so now I can have a cool conversation about all things gaming with you fellas. So let's do this.
I do the same thing every night.
So
Lance, I like the stairs. I like the stairs in your back and the wires coming down off the.
So I'm in the basement.
No way, really?
Oh yeah. I'm not allowed to be upstairs with this because sometimes they get loud. So I'm in the basement.
Sometimes he's not allowed to be downstairs either.
Of all the bedrooms.
He can't be on the main floor with his hobby. He has to go to the dungeon.
No, yeah.
Well, are those windows up to code? If there's a fire, could you break?
No, we're all
gonna
die. No. There's actually bars across them and stuff. Like my kids are stuck. If we can't make it up the stairs, we just I just start telling each other how much we love each other and how mad we are, and we start to blame people.
I'm pretty sure me and Rob both have gotten like angry texts while recording the podcast, being like, "Hey, the kids are sleeping. You need to be quiet." And I'm like, "We're just excited about talking about board games."
Yeah.
No, but there are a couple of windows that, if I had to,
you could dive
I've
through
hulked them before, and then I tried to hulk them back because you know when you like. Sometimes you don't realize how strong you are, either that or how broke everything else is, and you're just like pulling on something. And you're like, "Oh, I did not expect it to do that. Let me try to push it back," and it can never go back. You can break it easy.
So you just reminded me of a story that I remember years ago. Like, I mean, this is like in my 20s, so it's like a couple decades ago. I was over at a buddy's house. We were getting ready to head out, and he had opened one of those windows, like those in the basement apartments, or like they open and they open out. Remember those ones?
Yeah.
That's how these open. I have like a little turner, and they open out.
Well, so he had this one open, and it was like stuck, right? And I just to this day I remember like he told me he's like it's stuck. He's trying to pull it and it won't shut. And he said, "Go outside and go out to the window well. And could you just kick the bottom of it, kind of jar it loose or something?" I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." So I'm like tapping it with my foot, and he's like, "No, a little harder." I tap it again, a little harder, and I reel back, and I kick, and my foot goes right through the window. He's like, "That'll do. That'll do."
Now it's never shut. Never shut.
So another quick side story. So I'm a realtor, right? And I don't know why people do this sometimes.
Wait,
we were in this.
Did you say realtor? Is there an I between the L and the T?
No, realtor. I'm a realtor. Yeah,
You're a real realtor.
I am. And so anyway, we were at this house, and this investor tried to flip this house. And to make the kitchen look bigger than what it was, he glued doors onto the side of the cabinet, but the doors would not open, right? And so one of my clients was like tugging on the door, and they're like, "Oh, these doors don't open. That's so crazy." I was like, "Oh, just don't worry about it. Watch out. I'll try to open them." Rip the two doors off in my hand. There's no door. It's just they glued these doors on. So I'm having to call the agent saying, "Hey, we don't want to buy your house. And by the way, I left the two doors on the counter because I ripped off the door."
That's awesome.
That was an awkward conversation.
Excellent. Now you had a question, and I talked over you because I wanted to know about the wiring. Wait a minute. You're a realtor, and you can't buy a better house?
Bro, I love my house.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm just like, you got wires dangling from the ceiling back
there.
Well,
no, what you're seeing above me, that's piping for my plumbing. Like, my whole basement is exposed. And so that way, like,
it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. But it's It's a big house too, though. So like the
All
base
right.
itself
So
is
I
about
did want to
2,000 square
say,
feet.
if anybody doesn't know who you
wow.
are, Lance, let us know who you are. So
All right. So my name is Lance Meister. I'm probably better known in the board game world as the Undead Viking. I have a review channel that I've run for about a decade now. And then recently, in the last couple of years, I got hired by Tasty Minstrel Games, and I now work in the industry full time, which is pretty amazing, I have to say. So it's a good life.
That's awesome. And we're here today to talk all about the upcoming stuff at Tasty Minstrel Games and you guys' philosophy on publishing games and what you do there, which is super cool. I'm excited to hear about the new stuff you guys have coming out.
My last experience playing one of their games was a pretty rough experience.
Oh,
no.
Here we go. What game is it?
It was a game we all played together called Scoville. We sort of played it. We'll talk about it later.
Do whatever. That was the best experience ever.
It started off great until we got to this one sauce, and we'll get there.
We can go ahead and talk about it. So we had a Patreon thing for our Patreon, which is just crazy, and we're going to do this hot sauce challenge. And so we're like, well, instead of just doing a plain hot sauce challenge, we'll add Scoville into the mix. And so what we did is basically each time a new pepper was made in Scoville, you were allowed to challenge one of the other players, or both of the other players, which were the other two co-hosts, to eat a specific like hotness thing.
Hold on, Lance.
And the
okay, real quick,
the pepper
Roy's
scaled
being
up.
nice. So Matt and I are playing the game. We're like, okay, we'll scale up. You know, we'll try to go the order of the peppers, right?
Oh yeah, and I
we're-
was trying to force it to be
if
like,
I
let's
a
make
white
ghost
or black,
peppers.
you
Let's
guys
make
gotta
ghost
eat them
peppers.
different. It was such a jerk, bro. So we went from like 1, 2, and 3 to like 9 and 10. Forget, 4 through 8. It was terrible, Lance. Our face was on fire. There was a part where Roy just looks at the camera, and all of a sudden he gets really quiet.
I had to
He
leave
starts
the
shaking
room.
his head, and he's like, "Guys, I'll be back. I'll be back." And he edited it out. But from Matt and I's point of view, we just hear hurling in the bathroom outside of the room. Ugh, ugh.
Just viciously trying to
So
cough up
no,
this
the
god-awful
game
hot
wasn't
sauce.
bad, but the experience was pretty interesting and pretty different.
Well, I guess I'm glad that we were able to facilitate that for you.
Yeah, that's
You kept
what
the video
gaming's
on
all
theme,
about, right?
So
that's that whole board
Incredible
games
stomach
board games that tell stories, right? And, I mean, well, no, and so the whole thing is that, I mean, that's something like, and I'll say this about any game, but I mean, you'll remember that game of Scoville for
I'll
like
never
forever,
forget it.
right?
Forever,
You'll never
absolutely.
forget because you had that unique experience, and whereas and I like it when stuff like that happens. I mean, I can enjoy a game. I can sit down and play a game, and I'll forget about it. Like, let's say I sit down and play Terra Mystica for like the 20th time or something like that, and I'll get through it. I'll play it. It was fun, whatever. But it's those signature moments when you're playing a game and you remember it. You remember like that. I mean, like I played, like I said, like I just took Terra Mystica out of nowhere. I mean, I probably played that game 2 or 3 dozen times.
yeah.
But I only really remember one session, and because everybody just totally boned me because nobody built anything near my stuff. I don't. Are you guys familiar with Terra Mystica? Like the whole process, like you have to be building next to each other to kind of use each other's power. Yeah. So like nobody built next to me, and so like when everybody else had this like long giant turn where they're like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna change this power and do that, and I'm gonna build this building, and then it got to me, I was like, well, I'm just gonna move this here, I'm done. It was 2 hours of interminable bastardry from everybody else at the table. But I'll remember that session over any of the other ones I'll do.
Well, that's one of the things we're really big about on this podcast is about the stories and relationships that board games create. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of like thematic games, because they facilitate those stories. It's not just about like, oh yeah, Rob got 30 points and Roy got 31 points and Matt got like 37.
Why'd you say it? Why'd you have to put me at the bottom?
You're the very
why?
last.
Well, so
I didn't tell you how many points Lance got.
It is very rare. It is very rare that like that you'll have a straight strategy Euro have that story behind it, and it's usually, and when you do, it's usually something like you talked about, like your Scoville experience.
Yeah.
But mean, I remember games of Talisman that I played when I was 16 years old, and when like the one guy was all decked out in armor and a rune sword and everything, he went
turned
to
into
the
a
middle
frog and lost all his stuff.
Yeah, no, like the horrible black void destroyed him and killed him because he was the first person to make it to the middle, and even though he was king, king of the world, all of a sudden gone in an instant.
Bro, they will let go of your hand regardless if you say you're king of the world. It's one thing I learned from that movie. Jack said he was the king of the world. She still let go, even though she said she wouldn't.
Remember that? And also they showed where they on Mythbusters they showed where both of them could have been on the door and survived. Like they showed how they could have laid down on it and evened out the weight, and they both would have lived. But whatever. But no, awesome. I agree with you 100% that like the thematic games do like they allow you to have those superlative experiences more readily. I'm not going to say 100% that if you're playing a game of El Grande, you're not going to have some memorable experience, but I've never heard the story. So you remember that one time 7 years ago when you decided to use 2 action allowances instead of 1 and only scored 3 points instead of 2, and I claimed victory. I never hear that story.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, we don't tell those stories in this show.
But the one time that Roy backstabbed everybody in Shadows over Camelot will never be forgotten.
Oh no!
No, absolutely not. And not once. You did it twice. Twice. You did it once at that con when we played at, and then you did it again at your house.
I mean, I am never the traitor, ever. I don't know what you're talking about.
And you were like, guys, I'm not the traitor this time. I swear, at your house. And you were killing catapults. You were doing a great job. And you do so good, you make us believe you. And then the douche comes out, and it's it's all over the place.
It's waiting for that epic moment is what it is. I played a game of Battlestar Galactica that actually had the Caprica thing where you have to you get to the planet, and then you have to do the battles there, and they have to get everybody together.
That's crazy.
And until you can have somebody come basically you the one person then you get the admiral onto the ship and you take off, and then you live. But the entire game, I mean, I was the Cylon from the very beginning, and I was the admiral, and I sat there and the entire game did everything right. I mean, I never was treasonous once in the entire game, because I knew if I could get to Caprica and I could be alive, I could totally bone everybody. And so we got there, and they're all like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this, that, the other thing. And a couple turns in Caprica, I'm helping out. And eventually at some point I said, hey, give me your what's the executive orders, and I can do those 2 actions.
That's the best thing to do right there.
Give me that executive order so I can
You're such a jerk.
I can do those 2 actions so I can take out 2 of those robots. Oh yeah, totally. Executive action. There you go. I go to the ship and I take off, and I leave you all for dead.
That's
Cylon,
awesome.
You lose.
That's awesome.
Ever since then, whenever we play that with Caprica, the admiral's just executed before they get to Caprica.
That's awesome.
We're gonna take the morale hit just to be sure.
That's the way to do it, though. You gotta act like you're rooting for the team and working super hard because the game messes up the humans by itself. It's wearing them down so much. And then just at that pivotal moment, just be like, and we lose the last thing. Okay, yay! So, Cylons are easy mode, though. Humans are way harder to play. So,
yeah, I will say that when you win as a human, it feels wonderfully epic. To pull off the win.
It's definitely fulfilling.
It is extremely fulfilling. So
awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about Tasty Minstrel Games.
Absolutely.
So what
do you
all
want to
do
know?
you do over there?
I'm an open book.
What all is your job description and what goes on over there at Tasty Minstrel Games?
Security number. Shipping manifest.
No. So cool fact. When Michael Mendez, the founder and CEO of Tasty Minstrel Games, contacted me and said, basically one time he and I became friends at Gen Con 4 or 5 years ago. And then about 3 years ago or so, like I half jokingly mentioned, "Hey, so when are you gonna give me a job?" And then he was just like, "Oh, you want to work for me?" Like literally, like he had like just like, "Oh, yeah, I didn't know," and and so he and so then it was just one of those processes where he mentioned that, like, you know, he would like to hire me, and it was just a process that kind of went on for a while, and eventually at one point he called me up and he said, "Well, it's no longer an if, it's a when. I've got a position for you that I want you to do." And but I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, just prepare yourself, and we'll sit down and we'll discuss like contract and what have you. And so eventually, like, I saw him at a convention. He and I sat down and had a good dinner together, and we talked about it and what his expectations were and things like that. And then when I went home, then we negotiated for maybe a week, you know, as far as what he would need to pay me to leave the job, because I was working at U.S. Bank for 16 years, and I had a lot of tenure there, and just to kind of drop that, like you know, like drop that and then move on. I mean, I have nothing bad to say about U.S. Bank. Like, it was my first like real job with like benefits and, you know, healthcare. I met my wife there, you know, so I mean, if I hadn't been working there, I wouldn't be married. I wouldn't have 2 kids. You know, so I you know, but you know, obviously the job didn't inspire me in any way. It was just a job. I went, sat at a desk, and I hammered away at problems for 8 hours a day, and then I left. So, but it was still scary. I mean, it was like, but I knew I'd always have a job there, right? I knew I could work there for the next 20 years of my life. I could retire. I'd have a pension. I'd have, you know, I'd be fine. So it was one of those things where, you know, deciding that I was going to make that switch, you know, was really tough for me. It was something that we had a lot of conversations with my wife about it, and it was just tough. And then Michael just called me one day, and he's just like, you know, it's like, you know, he said, we're poised for big things, and we're getting bigger. It's gonna be exciting, and I want you to be part of it. And I finally decided, well, you know, it's like when I was very young, I shouldn't say very young. I was a teenager, and my grandpa said to me, you know, he said the trick to being happy is to find something you like to do, and then fool somebody into paying you to do it.
That's awesome.
And I thought about that, and then I also said, and I told my wife eventually, I said, you know, I you know, win or lose, you know, I could always find a job in my field if this TMG thing doesn't work out. But I said, I'd really hate to be 75 years old and say, man, I really wish I'd done that.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, so I was just like, I can't. You know, you get one trip. You get one trip. I was like, so I dove in. And so the first thing that happened was he sent me over my contract that I had to sign, and everything was on there, and he gave me my title, and it said official Viking pillager of Tasty Minstrel Games.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's awesome.
And that's the contract that I signed with Tasty Minstrel Games. And you know, and that's like, you know, kind of a fun title, but that's one of the things like the president of the company, a gentleman by the name of Daniel Hadlock, like, he is like, I think his is like the organizer of fun, I think is his title. You know, so it's like it's not a real, I mean, it's a real job, but it's not like a job where you're, you know, it's not it's tough to explain. Daniel also said the day after I got hired, he said, you know, this is TMG. This is where your dreams come true. You know, this is where, like, you get to
Was
play
he wearing
games.
like a Willy Wonka hat, or?
Yeah, it's like comes
Was
out.
he also bipolar and then came out and said, "No, you did not win, Charlie"?
Yeah, pure imagination. Yeah, no. So I mean, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like we're in the job of making and creating board games and making people happy, and it's just, and it's kind of it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's a lot of days where maybe it isn't the best day ever working, but I always say my worst day of working for Tasty Minstrel Games is way better still than the best day I've ever had at any other job I've ever had. So,
all right, I'll apply. Jeez.
So the big thing is that for me is that I do a lot of the social media stuff. I do a lot of like talking to influencers like you guys. Making sure that you're familiar with TMG games, what we're coming out with, what we're publishing, making sure that hey, if you're wanting a game, if you're going to review it and you want to check that out, making sure those things get you people's hands. I've also just migrated into being in charge of Kickstarter projects for us, and so like I coordinate with like the logistics people that we have, our sales people that we have, our art people that we have, and work with them and making sure our Kickstarter projects are good to go and ready to run and ready to publish and ready to roll. And then when the Kickstarter project's running, that's my thing, making sure that whatever stepping on the gas and making sure that everybody knows that we're creating those and that they're out there and they're good to go. And then plus conventions, we go to several conventions every year. And so when I go to conventions, I'm the media guy for that. If people want to come by and talk games, I'm the one they talk to. If they want to meet with designers or you want to meet with like Michael or Seth or any other people at TMG, I facilitate that. And it's no one person has like a specific job. I mean, like Adam McIver, who's also a board game designer, but also a fantastic artist. He's like our in-house artist, and yeah, that's his thing. But he's also so much more. There's so many more things that he does. He's involved in game development. He's in branding for our company. Like Seth Jaffe is one of the co-founders of the company. He's obviously designed games as well, but he's also very, very in depth into the our different publishing partners that we have, and also like our production that goes on in China. So it's definitely you kind of learn everything and you do everything. So if there is something that needs to be done and picked up immediately, there's very easy transition into doing that. So yeah, there you go. So that's my really short answer to what it is I do at TMG.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I mean, so I know you guys want to talk about what's coming up and the games that are in the future. And I know ostensibly we're here to talk a lot about Downfall, and I do want to talk about Downfall with you guys because we're super excited about that. But we also have several titles right now that are going to be coming out at Essen.
When's Crusaders coming out?
Well, Crusaders, we just finished the Kickstarter like 2-3 months ago. That's actually a really, really good question. But the best answer to that, and I'm gonna plug myself here. Taste Minstrel Games has its own podcast now that I host.
What?
And
I've listened to every episode.
Oh well, thanks, man. You're the one. So we are going to every month, or we're going to try every month. I sit down with Daniel and we do an Ask the President and do the state of TMG, and that's something that we try to we answer. When is this game coming? When is that game coming? We make sure we answer those questions. And right now we're really pleased with how far along Crusaders is, and I think we said like June of 2018, but it looks like unless we run into any hiccups, it might come even sooner than that. So, awesome. But we are on track for next year. And Crusaders is a fantastic game.
I'm looking forward to that game. That's one that I'm upset that I missed on Kickstarter.
Oh, well, I'm sure we can get you taken care of, buddy. Just, you know a guy.
I know a guy.
He's got Viking lineage.
Yeah, there you go. No, I have I still have my prototype. I mean I've played it probably a good 20 times or so, and I'm still awesome. Digging into it and finding cool things to do with it. So I'm excited to see the final version of it, obviously. That is, and then Flow of History is still early 2018 as well. Those were our two Kickstarters prior. To Downfall, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But Chimera Station was a Kickstarter we successfully ran that has now been delivered, and we ran it because that was the first game we ever did that had any kind of like a mini in it.
And those Chimera minis Station, are pretty crazy, right?
What it is, it's a worker placement game where you create aliens, and the thing is that your aliens actually have two spots. Like think of a Lego pieces, but they look like aliens, and so you pop them out, and then if you go to certain places, you can then graft different parts to them. So you can graft tentacles to them so they can grab more stuff, or you can you can put claws on them, which makes them grab other workers that are in a spot they want to use and throw them away, so then they can use that spot. So there's different like powers you can give them by giving them these different mutated parts. And so we ran into some problems of making sure that those pieces stick together. We didn't want to have pieces that like after you used them 2 or 3 times, they wore out and they were like coming apart. We wanted to make sure they stuck really well. So we ran into some problems with that, and backers, understandably, we're getting frustrated over the fact that the timeline that we gave them for when we would deliver them the game had come and gone, and we felt really bad about that. But we wanted to make sure if we have the choice between frustrating people over getting a game late as opposed to frustrating people over getting a game that isn't made to the like ridiculously high standards that we give ourselves, we will take option A over B every single time, and we try to convey that, and we try to understand. But on the same token, we understand completely why somebody would be frustrated, and we take that very seriously. So to make sure that people to try to do right by them, we actually every single Kickstarter game, we actually airshipped it to all of our fulfillment centers instead of putting it on a boat. Yeah, so and yeah, sure, that might have cost us some money, but it was one of those. Cheap. It was one of those least we can do kind of things, So so all of our, except for like, unless somebody has moved and changed an address, from what I understand, our Kickstarter fulfillment is completely done for that, and now we're looking forward to launching Chimera Station at Essen, or Spiel, if you want to call it that, at this year, along with 2 other games that I'll touch on briefly that we're really excited about. One of them is Harvest, which is set in the Harbor universe, if you're familiar with Harbor universe, also where the game Belfort is based in. Yep. It's kind of TMG's little fantasy world. Harvest is a game of farming, but it is a game of farming that is kind of set into a fantastic medieval world. Tom Vassell fairly recently reviewed it and found it quite charming, gave it his seal of excellence, so we were pretty excited about that. And then the other game that I want to make sure we talk about is Exodus Fleets, which is a game by Gabriel Cohn. It is his first big design, and that is a game where the Earth is dying, and each person runs a faction that needs to get off of the Earth, and you do that by bidding for these different resources and different ships and things like that. They're going to allow you to escape Earth before it dies, and it sounds really grim, but the game is
sounds like Matt's kind of game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it's a bidding game that a lot of times I tell people, oh, it's a bidding game, and see, I like bidding games. I love the idea of what can I bid here that will how cheap can I get this, right? When you have that decision where it's like somebody goes 3 and then somebody else bids 4, and you're like, well, I could say 5, but then somebody's going to say 7. And I don't want to pay 8, so do I say 7 here, or would I be able to save myself, 2 if I don't say that, so I love those decisions. But the auction, in my opinion, this one's a little bit unique because the way it's set up is that, it's tough to tell if going first or last in the auction is where you want to be. And so because you can definitely, try to gauge other people's responses, and like if you're the first person, you get to set that open bid. You kind of maybe will end up boning yourself a little bit if you're just setting that open bid high, hoping somebody else will take it, or whether you'll get jammed and you'll get stuck with it. It's just there's a lot of really cool decisions, but the bidding isn't, while it's still a main mechanism, it isn't like overshadowing everything else. So I've introduced that game to people that say I don't really like bidding games, and they've really fallen in love with it and really liked it. So, and also I should say that Tom Vassell recently reviewed that one pretty well as well. So if that, and you can go check out his videos and you can see what you think of those. So
who's that? Never heard of Tom Vassell before. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tom's awesome.
So, yeah, no. So I mean, a couple of games that we're really excited about as far as that goes. But Downfall. So Downfall is a 4X strategy game. It is unlike anything that TMG has ever attempted to tackle and produce before. It is a 4X game set in a Earth about 200 years in the future, where nuclear hostilities have finally occurred. 99% of the population of the world is gone, and each person is going to run a faction that is trying to basically desperately trying to like just survive and survive while in competing with everyone else. It is each person will have their own like unique powers and an asymmetrical setup. It's designed by John D. Clare, who you might recognize is the same guy who recently had a fairly large hit called Mystic Vale with
not to be rude,
AEG.
but as soon as you said his name, I wanted a donut. I know
yeah,
they're right or relevant at all.
There you go.
But I was like, bro, and the Claire donut sounds so good right now. Maybe it's just the obesity of me talking, but I loved it.
Yeah, Mystic Vale's solid. Does this use clear cards?
No, it does not. This is Gabriel Cohen's first big design. This actually uses card drafting. Each person has a hand of cards, or as they're called a pack in this, and so they have their pack of cards, and they will choose one card to take an action, and everybody puts it down, and then you all reveal what you're gonna your action. Each card has a primary action and a secondary action. So even if the card, if you're looking at your cards and you can't seem to find one that you're gonna be able to do something useful. It isn't like something where it's like, oh, all these cards stink, I can't do anything with these. That's not gonna happen. But after you do that, then you take the rest of the cards and you hand them to the person on your left, and then they hand you those cards, and then everybody draws another card from their deck, and now you have 5 cards to choose from again. The big thing is that when you draw your cards, there's a chance that you're going to get what's called a winter card. And a winter card, basically nuclear winter type of thing.
Very post-apocalyptic.
There you go. If you draw a winter card, you push the winter track up a notch, and then as the winter track climbs the track, then climbs up these notches, certain events will be triggered. You draw an event card. This could be the spread of radiation. Maybe you have to have enough food to feed your people, or they starve. Things like that. And eventually, if enough winter cards are drawn, then the game ends, because winter is here, and now you're going to see who's actually going to have the resources and the wherewithal to actually survive, and whose factions are going to live and die. So it is totally unlike anything we've created. We definitely used our knowledge that we gained from Chimera Station and Crusaders as far as the production of miniatures go.
Nice.
To lend it to this, because this is going to be a miniatures game. You're going to have there are airships, basically kind of like these spaceships that are going to move your troops and your people around the board. That are going to be miniatures. There are miniatures for each of the leaders. And if the Kickstarter does well, maybe you'll see some more things added as it goes on. But this is, like I said, it is a big game. It is something unlike we've ever done. This is the most thematic game that Tasty
I was
Minstrel
really
has
excited to talk to you about this game, just because I'm like, oh man, it has that look, and I'm a huge fan of 4X games. So, and it's cool because this is going to be a 4X game that isn't just space 4X. It's post-apocalyptic Earth 4X, which should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're like I said, we're really excited about this one. We're trying to do our due diligence, right?
Yeah.
To make the game as good as we possibly can. Obviously. But it's I mean, it's a little scary, just because we're kind of moving out into territory that isn't in our comfort zone. I mean, People know Tasty Minstrel Games for our, Euros, if you will, our strategy games, if you will. This is definitely not, this is out of our comfort zone, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And but that is not to say that we don't feel very confident with this game. This game's been in development for several years, and it's. I mean, I've played it now a few times. It's just every time I've played it, it's just awesome. And like we were talking earlier about those stories, and this is a thing that creates those stories. It has conflict. Sure. It has the game beyond the game, as I say. Like when you're negotiating with other people. And there's just cool little things on there too that you may have seen in other games, but they're here as well. I mean, like there's certain areas that if radiation grows too much, like certain areas of the board will just become dead and you can't use them anymore. So you have to kind of work against the radiation of the world, the spreading radiation. If you collect resources and you get too many resources that you can't carry away, then you leave them on the board and other people can come over and snag them. Man. So like so I like the little touches in the game where the mechanisms actually make like thematic or narrative sense, and the designer John really made it a point to do that.
So how does is there player versus player combat in the game like you would have in other 4X or area control games?
Yep. You can initiate conflict with each other to drive people away, and yes, like conflict between the players is a part of the game, which is also something that is kind of out of the comfort zone for TMG as well.
How is that resolved? Is it dice or cards or bidding?
It is all strategy. There's no dice.
Gotcha.
It is all deterministic combat. So it's one of those things where you can look at the board and you can see where you're weak and you can see where you're strong. And you have to be able to react to that. And that's where also the game beyond the game comes in too, because then you can start talking to other players and like you mean there's no specific like negotiation element to the game, but every time I've played it, there's definitely been conversations.
I won't attack you here if you don't attack me there.
Yeah,
there's an Armistice line. Armistice line. Don't cross the Armistice line.
Yeah, so it's definitely it's a game that it will on several occasions test your friendships, so to speak.
Hey, that's what I'm all about, testing friendships. You got that's what you need to do to make sure that they're strong, right?
I can only achieve victory by crawling over the carcasses of you.
That's how you climb the mountain.
Hey man, the future post-apocalyptic wastes are not easily survived. No. You gotta do what you can.
I have a super random question.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping, since the game involves nuclear winter, is there like a faction that's just basically a bunch of washed up politicians and climate change deniers going, guys, don't worry, global warming isn't real. It's getting colder.
No, but well, there's like there is like a politician-esque, I guess, faction leader. I think they're called the Economist. But nice. I don't think, but they're kind of more of a, they have the groundswell of the people behind them because they're very charismatic. So maybe if you wanted to play that character as the as that person, you definitely could. So and the factions do like make sense. There's like a scientist faction.
Are the factions very asymmetrical, like with different powers and things like that?
Yes. Exactly.
Awesome.
So it's like certain things will be good at certain like obviously like there's one that's the warrior faction basically, yes. Like the admiral. They were in charge of like a massive military prior to the nuclear war, and so like they are predisposed towards that conflict generation.
That's awesome.
Whereas like the scientist, obviously there is a tech tree that you will research and stuff like this. So the scientist is predisposed for that. So they definitely, they do fit into those shoe boxes, so to speak. But and it does make sure that people are playing them. You don't have to play them to your strengths. Obviously, you can go off kilter, but you're going to find yourself you're going to be much more successful if you do play to your faction's strength. And that's where that negotiation comes into mind too, where it's just like you make sure that you can somehow convince the military guy to seek somebody else to destroy, not you. Try not to make too much noise. And the cool thing, Yeah, sir. What's up?
What would you say the average playtime is for a game of Downfall?
Well, the goal of it depends.
Because it sounds like it could be a big game.
The first time I played it, it was like where I was being taught the game. Luckily, there was one person that had played it before. I actually played it more than once before, and so with 4 of us, it took about 2 hours to get done, and that was with one person completely knowing the rules and kind of walking us through. Now the box says 90 to 150 minutes, and I think that's fair. And obviously with the first time you play it, if you sit down with 5 of you and none of you have played the game before, you're gonna have a slog. It's just because you're looking at that rule book and whatever. It's just like any game like that. So like a first time playthrough, you're going to hit that 4-hour limit, that you're going to be at that table for a while, and maybe even longer. But as you play it, and as everybody kind of acclimates themselves to the rules and knows what they're supposed to do, and I should say you can play up to 6. It is a 3 to 6 player game. So, and that's one of the other things too, is like we've never really made a game that has that many people available to play with. That's awesome. It's something we're really, really excited about. It's one of those things where it's like I want to, like with Crusaders, like I played Crusaders so many times. It was like a really good solid Euro. I mean, I played the playtest versions that Seth had many times, and I watched the game kind of grow from its infancy. Yeah. And I had in the back of my head, I was just like, I think this game is going to be a hit. I think people are going to really take to this game. I think people are going to like it. And but you're always so scared for the day that you push the button to launch the Kickstarter. You have no idea. And so, of course, we just, we funded really quickly, and people were super excited. I mean, it has a lot to do, in my opinion, with the fact that we offer that deluxe version of these games. And so
that's one of the things I was going to ask is, are you doing anything special for the Downfall Kickstarter? So.
Yeah, we are having a deluxe version. It's going to have metal tokens, instead of cardboard tokens. That's
awesome.
It's going to have the plastic minis. It's going to have and as we hit stretch goals, you're going to find more and more cardboard tokens being removed from the game and more wood being added to the game. So hopefully when all is said and done and we've met a lot of our stretch goals, you're going to see a game that, like take, for example, Yokohama, which was a really successful Kickstarter for us and a fantastic game that we made. And all the credit in the world to Hisashi Hayashi for creating such an amazing game. But the fact that, that if you have a deluxe version of Yokohama, there's almost no cardboard in that game. I mean, it's all wood and metal, and so it's just like when people walk by the table and they see that on the table, they're just like, oh my gosh, what, like, how heavy is this box? And that was I think it was like a 7-pound box, but we want to make sure that, if people are gonna if they believe in us and they want to give us that money up front, and want to be part of the Kickstarter. We feel that we should reward those people that continue to have faith and trust in us to create these awesome games. That we want to give them something amazing. And one of the things that we're pretty proud of is the fact that when we did the Orleans Deluxe, the first deluxeification thing that we did, that was and people didn't really know. They were like, what's all this about, and that kind of thing. And we've been very pleasantly surprised to see lots of other companies take on this same approach, where they're like, okay, well, in this Kickstarter, we're going to have a deluxe game that you can only get this deluxe game right now, and you won't be able to get it in stores afterwards. And I think some people will say, well, it's a Kickstarter exclusive, and I was like, well, I guess I can see that point, but the big thing is that if you have the retail version, it plays exactly the same. There isn't a special card or anything you're getting in the deluxe version. You're not getting anything game wise that isn't that we're withholding from retail. It's just making the game look nice on your table, and
that's the way to do it.
And that's our goal.
Absolutely. We've had many a contentious argument on this podcast about
for sure about exclusive things that actually affect the game not being able to be gotten after the fact.
Or, you can buy it at a con from the developer's booth for $40 for a promo card or something. And you're just like, what? It's as much as a game.
The only ones of those that really bother me are, and I shouldn't say this about a company that I actually really, really appreciate the time and effort and the work that they put into their games, but it's for me, it's one of those things where it's like, you can't, like with like a Cool Mini or Not game, it's like, did I get every single Arcadia Quest figure?
Yeah. It's like if you don't back the Kickstarter, the Kickstarter, you have to pretend it doesn't exist. I mean, that's just the way it is.
You can sometimes get them at like conventions. Like if you go to a convention, they might have them for sale or something like that. But it is one of those things where it's just like, you're like, but how do you even know? I mean, it's just like, did I get all the? Is there one like random weird hero out there that I haven't managed to pick up?
Then you look on eBay and it's like $60 for one little figure, and
you want to tell you. And you should be able to have the strength, right, to just say, you know what, I don't
get on
need
Kickstarter and back it in time. You're right. You should have the strength to know that if that company is going to do that, let's have the sense to get on Kickstarter and back it, especially if you know you're going to like the game.
Well, sometimes, like if you're new to board gaming, the game could have already come out a couple years ago, or if like you just don't have the funds at that time.
Here's the other thing, though. It doesn't break the game. You can play Blood Rage without Fenrir, without the Mountain Giant. You can play it without those guys. It makes it better, but it doesn't like take away from the game being a great game. Like
we're starting the argument now, Lance.
I see both sides of the argument, and I understand. But at the same time, if they are going to do that as a company,
I mean, it
don't
works.
get mad if you miss out.
I like the deluxe version theory better. So
I like the idea that I know that this game is going to come out to people in the store a couple months before me. However, I spent that extra $20 and I'm going to get an additional $100+ worth of stuff. To me, that's worth it. That's why I'll back games on Cool Mini or Not on their Kickstarter, because I know it's going to be worth it. Now, granted, they lie whenever they say they're going to ship it to you. Don't believe them when they say they're going to ship it. But like, it doesn't take away from the game. You can still play the game with or without it. It's just some people have better editions. Look at board games. I mean, not board games, video games. There's deluxe versions of video games that you'll miss out on stuff.
Yeah, but
unless
if
you
they're
pre-ordered
DLC
it,
that
or
you
unless
can
you
never
pay.
get.
Yeah, or you pay the $50 for the DLC. You buy the game again for a DLC. Okay.
Or you have all of those pre-order bonuses. So you have to pre-order the game in 7 different areas.
It's just you
get that special scarf.
Cosmetic stuff doesn't bother me.
Well, I mean, but that's what Fenrir is. That's
No,
what
it's not.
other.
I'm just going to print off a Fenrir card.
You don't need Fenrir to play the game, is my point. It's not broken. The game is not
Lance
broken.
is like,
I mean, technically, you don't need any of the
this.
monsters to play. You could just play with regular soldiers.
Well, here's my argument about this. Okay,
Let's do this, Lance.
Okay, well, no, I'm not going to argue with you because I actually agree with you a lot. But here's a couple things. One, I have Cool Mini or Not Kickstarter exhaustion. I mean, honestly, it's just kind of like, it's one of those things where I'm like,
it sucks.
Why do I have all this rum and bones stuff? I mean, it's just like, I played this 3 times. It's just too much, right? I'm never gonna play this again. It's just, it went to the cull pile. It made me sad that it went to the cull pile, but I was like, oh, but I was like, no, just goodbye. See you later. Yeah. Find somebody that's willing to give me money for it, or willing to trade me something, some like grail that I want, and and it's gone. The big thing with that, with the Cool Mini or Not stuff, is that, they know exactly what they're doing.
For
right?
sure.
I mean,
sure.
They know what side their bread's buttered on. They know exactly what gets people excited about that stuff. And the moment you put that word exclusive on something, you can count on the fact that there are like how many X number of people like now like purchasing that because of the fact that it is. And I'd be really interested to know is how many of those people actually ever played like with all those factions. Like I have Chaos Ball and every single team. And and as much as I enjoy Chaos Ball and I think the game's fun, and I think it's an underrated classic from Eric Lang, there's like 3 or 4 teams that have never come out of Shrink for me. Just because I'm never going to play Chaos Ball 27 times in a year. I'm not going to need to play every single team. And it's just one of those things where they definitely know where to hit that completionist chord on our spine. And it's not their fault for doing it. It's our fault for buying into it. And there's that horrible fear of missing out that people have, where they're just like, but what if that one card was like would make the game so much better? But I mean, also there's like everybody always wanting to talk about like the aftermarket purchase, right? It's like or so like, oh well, if I have all this stuff, I can put it on on BGG, on the marketplace, and somebody will give me more money for it. So you can't blame the publishers for doing it. You can't, because none of us are willing to stand up and say stop. Nobody is going there and voting with their wallet and saying, yeah, none of us are going to back this because you guys put all these exclusives. And I shouldn't single out Cool Mini or Not, because it isn't just them.
But they do it more than any other company.
Well, that's just because they produce a lot of games with minis, right?
Yeah.
And so and minis lend themselves towards having exclusives, because you can't have a Euro worker placement game, and what are you going to have there for exclusives? Like a gold
exclusive
foil
meeples,
box.
Scented cubes,
scented cubes for the win.
So I agree with you, but it's one of those things where it's just like, if the wallets keep saying, feed me more, they're never gonna stay. They're never gonna stop doing it.
Absolutely.
And it's just,
well, and you should have some wisdom in those circumstances. Like if you're only gonna play the game once or twice. Like for example, I just sold my thing of my Kickstarter of Massive Darkness. Now, Massive Darkness looked absolutely amazing when it first came out. And then Zombicide came out with Black Plague, and I was like, this is not good for me.
You mean Green Horde, or because Black Plague was already out, right?
I think, yeah, I backed both. Maybe it was Green Horde or something like that. But
Green Horde, I didn't get Green Horde. I was just like, no,
but that dragon,
fan.
Dragon.
I own all of it except for a couple of special characters. Like I own all of seasons 1 through 3, all the expansions, all that stuff.
And you use it every single time you play. You use everything every single time you play, right? Last
time I played Zombicide, not Black Plague, but last time I played Zombicide,
was 2007.
No. It wasn't that long ago, and we did a custom. Like we made our own crazy scenario, and the board, I ended up using every single tile. It was like, because the table wasn't wide enough, it was like 8 feet by 3 feet.
And you know what? Good for you, man. I mean, because then it's worth your time and your investment in that.
Oh man, we had a blast.
But I guarantee you, the Zombicide stuff that I have that's sitting in my basement right now, I played it twice, and it's not coming out of there anytime soon. And it's just like, and it's also on the coal pile. It's just like, get somebody in here to buy this, get it out of here. Let me reclaim my basement, because
to me, it's not the greatest game in the world.
Lance has a basement full of zombies.
It's that fun button smashing video game that you just want to play because it's like endless hordes of whatever. And so, but that's the thing about Cool Mini or Not. They make really good games, and then they make some games that are just shelf killers. Like they will take up a lot of your space. So know that before you buy it. And know, like, that's one thing I will say about their Kickstarters. They also do a pretty good job. And I'll throw this out there for any other company, Tasty Minstrel and anybody else. If you're going to do a Kickstarter, do a lot of coverage. And a lot of the companies that I back on Kickstarter, they do a lot of coverage of their game. Yeah. And so I feel confident when I purchase that product.
Like I saw that Tasty Minstrel Games is doing YouTube ads now.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Well, leave no stone unturned, right? So, one of the things Michael Mendez, my boss, is that he is like big think guy, right?
Yeah,
He's always like, what can I do? What can I do to tap
push
into
this.
some market? Yeah, what market can I tap into if I do this, that, or the other thing? And he's always looking for something like that. He's always looking for a ways to find like a different way to reach. Because the big thing is that like and I tend to agree with this, is that lots of you have a BGG ad, it's going to reach those people.
Right.
You're going to reach those people. If you spend the money on Facebook ads, you're going to you can hit those markets, right? You can hit those people. You can get those keywords rolling. You can get those Google Analytics information running. You can get that stuff keyed in. But there's how many people out there aren't going to see that stuff? How do you reach those people? Mm-hmm. And so that's just another way for him. And he's pretty brilliant when it comes to stuff like that. So there you go.
I always get shocked when the ad for Downfall pops up on YouTube, because it has the same intro music as the podcast, and I'm like, hey, it's a TMG podcast.
Yeah, the music for our podcast is done by oh god, what's his name? Professor Shy Guy. If you ever want to YouTube him up, he's
it's pretty awesome.
He's like a techno gamer guy. He's like good friends with Michael. He's actually it's one of those things where I'm always trying to do things. He's actually recorded some outro music for us, so we're gonna start incorporating that sometime soon.
Sweet.
For the I got to get somebody to do a good voiceover. I got to find because I can't do a voiceover. It's horrible. I got to find somebody with a way better voice than me to do that for me. So, but yeah, man. So I mean, October 17th. I don't think I mentioned that. October 17th is the launch date.
I was getting ready to ask you that.
That's awesome.
Downfall. Yeah. So if you want to know that, you can go to playtmg.com. We just recently completely renovated our website. So if you haven't checked out our website in a long time or never have, we just recently completely redid the whole thing. And we're pretty excited about that. And you can always, if you want to get to the bottom of anything, you can just go to our website at playtmg.com, and there's a big button there to subscribe to our newsletter. And if you do that, you're going to get an email from me at least once or twice a month telling you about all the cool things that are coming up from Tasty Minstrel Games. So
awesome. So what does Tasty Minstrel look for when they're looking at publishing different games and stuff like that? Is it have to be a certain criteria? Do they have to be known designers? What's the sort of things that they look for? Games that
are fun.
Nice.
That's quite literally the beginning and end of it. Games that are fun. That's it's if it isn't fun, then we aren't going to look at it. If we play a game and it's fun, then we start looking at, is this financially viable? There have been many games that we've seen that are really fun, but they just financially you can't create them. I remember there was a person that showed us this demo. I forget what convention it was, and it was it actually had the guy had an actual guitar as part of the game, and we were just like, this is really fun. Yeah, I was like, this is really fun. There's no way anybody can publish this. Because he's like, well, you can just publish it for people that want. And I shouldn't. I'm giving the designer a dumb guy voice, so I apologize for that. But he said, well, you could market it to people that have guitars already. I was like, well, you're already taking. And I didn't say this, but I mean, and it made a lot of sense. But one of the other people from TMG, and I won't speak for them, so I don't. But you're taking a small market of people
and making it smaller,
and you're making it even smaller. The game you have, and we had a blast playing it, but it was just kind of like.
I'm just so confused about this game. Is it like an acoustic guitar, and you gotta it's a dexterity game where you gotta try to throw the picks into the hole? I'm trying to figure out how you play a game with a guitar.
No, it was it was you actually did play the guitar in the game, and it actually there was some dexterity elements to it and things like that.
That's so crazy.
But but it really and the guy had taken a long time to create it and had worked really hard at it, and maybe he took the basic idea of that game and maybe he folded it back into something else and create another thing. But so there's games like that where it's just and we've even had people that come up to us and say, I'm going to show you this game. Now I realize this game financially isn't viable, and they say that from the get-go, and I'm like, and we're like, oh yeah. So the big thing is that, like I said, the game's got to be fun. And then we move into that world of, can we make it, and then we worry about whether or not it fits into our catalog. And I don't think there's really a catalog for TMG, honestly, especially now since we're doing Downfall. I mean, it isn't like if somebody showed up to us with a giant giant bucket of dice game like Zombicide and showed it to us, we would immediately say no thank you. But the game would still have to be fun. And the thing is that there are three gatekeepers, as they say. Yeah, there are three gatekeepers, so to speak. We have our two people on our development team, Andy and Seth, and then we have Michael, and those are the three gatekeepers. And they have. I mean, I can play a game and I can say, "Hey, Michael, this game's really fun," and he'll say, "Well, I have to play it." He's not going to take my word for it. He's just like, I'm going to play it and I'm going to see if I like it, because he's not going to publish a game that at least one of those three doesn't. Now, getting one of those three to really like a giant bucket of dice rolling game might be a little difficult, I'll fully admit, but it isn't unheard of. And for me, it's one of those things where if you have a submission, if you have something, we actually on our website, obviously there is a path to you need to submit a game. You want to submit a game, but we do ask that it has to be complete. It can't be like, oh, I have this 60-70% of an idea, I really like you to buy it from us, and then you can go ahead and develop it and finish it off. That's not what we do. We will take a game and it might need a little polish. And then like maybe Seth and Andy will take it and maybe monkey with it a little bit and just get it to flow better. But it needs to be a complete game. I mean, everybody needs, and you'd be surprised. I mean, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You'd be surprised though. There are a lot of designers out there that do approach, and designers that either have published games to their credit or don't have any published games to their credit, and they have like these 70-80% of a game type of thing, and there are lots of game companies that are willing to, like, they can see the shiny good parts of that game shining through, and they're willing to take that game on and like, hey, let's make a fantastic game out of this, and I kudos to those publishers that are willing to do that. And it isn't that we aren't willing to do that. My personal
I'm sure
opinion,
it takes a lot of manpower to do that.
Well, it does. And like, we have 10 employees with TMG. I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, for example, Downfall, and I was with the company when Downfall was first suggested to us, but when Downfall has been with the company for several years. The Downfall we have now is definitely different from the Downfall that was submitted. But the Downfall game that was submitted was a complete game. It was a game that everybody could play, and it had a beginning and an end, and it had a definitive end. It was just that it was a polish that was done to it to bring it to the conclusion that it's at now. So my point is that it's one of those things where maybe we'll miss out on a few games that if we had taken the time to polish them up and finish them off, that we'll miss out on. Yeah. But it's always been our opinion is if that game's good enough, somebody else is going to publish it. And if somebody else publishes it, and if somebody else publishes it, great. Because ultimately, yes, TMG wants to create awesome games and they want to make people happy, and it is a company, but our goal, our focus isn't like we need to do this to make money. Our goal is we want to make sure that when somebody sees, the Dargon on the box, they're going to say, "Oh, that's a quality game. That's a good game because TMG produced it." And nice. And that's it. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, we're not in this to make money." Obviously, we're a company. If we didn't, yes, we're profitable. I wouldn't have a job, right?
You have to be, absolutely.
But it isn't. I mean, I go crazy at times discussing things with Michael and Daniel, for that matter. And there are so many times when I've had conversations and they just start shaking their heads and they smile and they just say, it's like, we're not in this to make money on this. And I'm just like, but yes, we are. we're a company. We're supposed to make it. They're like, oh, they smile and just shake their heads. And I say that jokingly, but they, and a lot of people say that, oh yeah, they're gamer first. They really are. And
That's awesome.
You know, I just it's
You had me when you airship the product, because that's a big expense. I mean, so,
yeah,
yeah.
but it was
You
one
had
of those
me,
things
you had
where
me at hello.
it was just one of those things where it was just the right thing to do, right? And
Yeah.
and just do it. And the thing is that, you know, and the weird thing about that is it was the right thing to do, and we did send it out in an update that we said, hey, you guys are going to have your games. We're loading them up on a plane. We're bringing them over. We didn't say, oh, hey, this is super expensive. You should really appreciate it. We just said we want to make sure you have your games as soon as possible. And and you know what? I'm going to guess the vast majority of the backers never even read that update.
Or don't understand what it means, not
or,
being in the industry at all. So,
and the vast majority of the backers just got their game in the mail, like, you know, like 5-6 days later, and they're like, "Oh, cool, it's here."
Yeah.
And they're just but it doesn't matter because it was absolutely positively just the right thing to do. And the thing is that I don't even think, I mean, and don't quote me on this, but I don't even think that was Michael's call. I think that was our shipping and logistics manager just said, "I'm going to do this," and he worked the numbers out, and he just said, "This is the right thing to do." And after he was done, I think Michael goes, "Yeah, that was the right thing to do. Good call on that." You know, and he was just like, didn't phase him in the slightest that it cost X amount of money or whatever.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
So I know you guys bring some games to Kickstarter, and some of the other games go straight to like shelves, right? So what makes the difference in between which games you guys put on Kickstarter and which games you just publish through TMG normally?
Well, in the past, I can't really tell you. I mean, I think in the past, before there was like a ton of games that were published by TMG, it was one of those things where financially it just made more sense, right?
Right.
Eminent Domain was the first that first Kickstarter that TMG did and admittedly, before that, Clever Mojo Games did Alien Frontiers, which was also a game that like made like $27,000 or something on Kickstarter. But it's like, holy cow! I got, you know, now people are like,
it was one of the front runners of Kickstarter.
Yeah. But Eminent Domain did it, and I think it was like $58,000 or $60,000, and for the longest time that was like the number one game that got backed on Kickstarter and got created. But that was when, if I remember correctly, I think it was just Michael and Seth. That was the only two people that were running the show. Maybe there was one other person, I don't know. But now, you know, we financially are like lucrative and what have you. So the ones we take to Kickstarter now exclusively, and you can't, and I never say never, right? Or otherwise, because it comes back and bites
For
you.
sure.
You know,
You heard it here first.
Yeah, no. So I'm not going to say never, but there will. I mean, in the past, it was one of those things where it was just like it was, you know, because Kickstarter is also a really good way to get people to know about your game and to know about your company. And so there were games in the past that we did Kickstarter for that just made sense. That just, you know, it was one of those things like Thieves Market, a very, very fun little dice game. It just made sense to run Kickstarter for that. You know, when we did the reprint of Colosseum, it made sense to do that, you know, just because of the fact that Colosseum was a game that had been out of print for a long time that a lot of people liked, and so we ran a Kickstarter to get people excited about it. The big thing now is that, and never say never, but from my understanding, we have no intention whatsoever to kickstart a game unless we are doing a deluxe version of it. And in that case, then if we run it because the deluxe version will only be available for those backers for that game. And then so that and the thing is that
I like this, Lance.
Yeah, so the Kickstarter the Kickstarter thing is, yes, that money does go and it does help us publish the game. It basically you know, it pays for that print run or whatever. And people are like, "Oh, you got to clean up on that those Kickstarter, you like when you do the when you have the Kickstarter versions, the deluxe versions, you got to really clean up on that." We don't charge anything extra for, like, we charge what it costs us to deluxe the game, right? So if we go in and we say, okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to put metal coins in there. So we figure out how much those metal coins are going to weigh, how much it's going to take to produce those, and then we're going to put them in each box. And so that's going to cost us, an extra whatever, like, $2.73 per game or something to do that. That's not the exact number. I'm just throwing it out. And then we're also going to put these miniatures in there, and to put those miniatures in there, that's going to cost us an extra $3.78 per box. And then we're doing this, and it's going to cost us that. And so then we figure that out, and then we have, and we have a really good idea of, like, what kind of backing we're going to get. So like, let's say, and the difference between retail and deluxe is usually around $20 or possibly $30. And so that's how much money we have to play with, and then add in other things. And as they climb up, we start using up that chunk of money, right? We eventually what I think we've done in almost every one of our Kickstarter projects is we've used up that extra chunk, like an extra, and we keep adding more on anyway. It's just because of the fact that people are just showing up and they're giving it, because even though there's that extra like $20 we're getting per copy, ultimately, the margins and everything, it cuts into our profit per box, and so we do look at that. But it's one of those things where it's like, if people are going to keep showing up and keep backing it, you can't just say, oh well, we hit, we planned out our stretch goals to, we planned to $300,000 and we don't have anything else. So anything more we get now, nah, Well, if people keep showing up and giving us, and we hit 325,000 and 350,000 and so on and so forth, it's only right that we try to find some other way to add something back into the box to pay something back. And so that's been our mentality. Like, for example, with the Crusaders box, I mean, it's like we did so well. We were like, we don't have any more ideas, and we spent an entire day in teleconference just brainstorming up ideas. What can we put in this box? What do we have, and what can we improve? What's financially viable that isn't going to cost us an arm and a leg to add, but still going to be like something that people actually want, right? And so we brainstormed up ideas. We turned to the community and just said, what would you like to see added to the game? And that was excellent. I mean, somebody said, why don't we? I think Daniel, the president, said, why don't you just ask the people what they want? And I remember I did an update for the Kickstarter, and I said, what would people like to see as an add-on? And of course, you're going to get people that are going to ask for ludicrous things. Stuff, just like Travis Chance.
I want the entire box to be made of gold.
Yeah. Travis Chance once said about Kickstarters, and I have to laugh, but he's like, Kickstarter backers, they want the moon with a slice of right now. I mean, it's just like, and I found that funny, but there are always one or two people that are like that, just like, oh, I think that you should throw in another 60 metal coins. You're like, no, there's no point to that, because what would you use them for, other than,
another game.
Yeah,
exactly what they want it for.
Yeah, no, I mean, so you have to just kind of, and then you have to, but the big thing is communication, right? Telling people, it's like,
sure.
It's just like, those are great ideas, but that's not going to work for us, that kind of thing. So, but we do try to make sure that, like, when people get that Kickstarter box and they see it for the first time and they open it up, that they definitely have a wow, moment when they open it up. So, and that's what we go for every single time.
Awesome. So, switching back to your board game media side here, Lance, what are your thoughts on board game media's role that it plays in the board game industry?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a huge role, I mean, and it's just like, it isn't like, the number one website in the world for board games is an incomprehensible spreadsheet that the first time people go there, they're like, what
is this?
I can't use this at all.
Yeah, I mean, so and it's weird that, like, we have some sort of the grognards of the website. We have this kind of weird, I learned on it, now you learn on it too. It's like we got this.
It must hurt us all.
Yeah, so We definitely haven't moved into the world of, like, say, video games or anything like that, where all those video game major websites are so slick and created. So I really think that, like, board game media, whether it's, you know, written, podcast, video, what have you, it has an important role because of the fact that it definitely you know, you have people like Tom Vassell, you have people like Man vs. Meeple, you have people like Joel Eddy or Rodney Smith that are part of that huge community, and they're disseminating all that information, and then they can take that information and they can give it to their followers who follow them on YouTube or their you know, iTunes or what have you. And it's definitely, but the thing is that I found is that if you are a board gamer, it's one of those weird things. I kind of liken it to people that nobody just likes the band Rush. They love Rush, you know? Nobody just kind of likes board games. Once you fall in the rabbit hole, you just consume. You know, you just you have to know everything. You have to know about every game that's coming out. You have to know about that designer. You have to know what that publisher's making. Oh, is that Essen release coming now? You have to know.
Have you met Timothy Gay?
I don't believe I have.
Oh man,
dude is in love with Eric Lang. He's actually sleeping under his bed right now.
Oh, it's possible. Eric's a really nice fella.
But he's that guy. Everything that you just said,
where people are obsessed. Yeah.
That's
I mean, no, you gotta know about it, right? And
I get more Facebook notifications from him than all of my family combined on a daily basis.
And that's not a bad thing. But I mean, the thing is that we are, you know, we are creatures of our creation, and it's definitely like one of those things where, you know, you have to find some way to get that information. You know, this giant bucket of information. You need to get it into a funnel that people can go and open up the spigot and drink from. And the media people definitely are the ones that are going to bring that and create that for you, which is, you know, I mean, it's a very important role. And the thing is that there's, you know, there's what, 3-4 of them out there that are actually like making a living doing it. So if you think about that, is like all of the other ones are doing it because they have a passion for what they do. I mean, you guys are doing a podcast about board games. You're not like going outside and taking money off the money tree. I mean, this is taking away time from your friends and your family and what have you. But why? Because you love to talk about board games and you love to discuss them and you like to BS about them and all those other things. I mean, you can't play a board game right now, so instead you're talking about board games. You know what I mean? It's just
100% correct.
Yeah. So, and it's one of those things. And I did a video a little while ago where I do think there's a lot of people that get into board game media with the wrong intentions. Like they go into it thinking that it's like, oh, you know, they see people that are making careers out of it and they're like, oh, I can do that too. No, you can't. I mean, it's just like, unless you like seriously like treat it like a job, like you punch the clock and you do it every morning. You can't you can't do a video once every couple of weeks,
for sure.
You know, in your and
takes a lot of consistency and determination and just keeping at it and trying to figure out what works, you know? So.
Exactly. And I will say all day long, I'm supremely lucky that I started doing it like when there was nobody doing it, because I can't imagine what it would take to, you know, get people excited about your channel or what have you without spending a lot of money on just like, you know, on a publicist or something, you know, because you know, when I started doing videos, there was like 4 people doing videos, counting myself. Now you throw a rock, you can find a guy doing board game videos, and it's just or a girl for them. I shouldn't be sexist there, but I mean,
you terrible person.
Well, no, it's one of those bad pronouns kind of thing. But no, so it's one of those things where I'm disheartened whenever I see somebody say, oh, nobody cares about my opinions about these games. I might as well just quit. And it's like, what do you mean? You got 100 subscribers. That's like better than tons of people. You know,
Yeah. If you had 100 people in a room, it would feel like a lot of people for sure.
Exactly. You've got 7 videos. You know, just like, it's just like, just keep making them and do it to have fun, not
Yep.
to like, try to monetize it or anything like. Do it to have fun. And it's just, I don't know. Like, people always say, well, they point to channels like Man vs. Meeple and like, well, look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. David and Jeremy, who I consider very good friends, both quit their jobs and
went hardcore.
Decided we're going to make a studio in my basement, and we are going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on video and audio equipment, and we're going to make a top of the line, like, real movie set, and we're gonna do these videos, and it's just so if you did that and you had 100 subscribers, then I'd say, okay, you're doing something wrong. But if you're sitting in your basement and you're making videos with your iPhone and you're just having fun talking about games, then be happy with the response you get,
which is also a perfectly reasonable way to do it.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that.
Basements are great.
The big thing is, I was on a podcast about a month ago, and I always forget this guy's name, but he lives in South America, and he's a fantastic gentleman. And he said one thing. He said, "Comparison is the thief of joy."
Yeah.
And I still find myself like comparing myself to like other video reviewers, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, you've kind of made it." And I guess in a way, yeah, sure, I kind of have. But I still every once in a while find myself like compare myself to Tom, or I compare myself to Rodney, or I compare myself, and I'm like, "Oh, what if I had done this differently? What if?" And then I say, "Shut up!" It's like you made videos for fun for 8 years, and then a board game company hired you and is paying you a real salary to stay at home and work on board games every day. It's like there's like throw a rock, you're going to hit somebody that wishes they had your life. So so you have to keep it real, right? You have to kind of relax and just be excited with what you have.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll start to wrap this thing up. I just wanted to ask, is there anything else you wanted to talk about or promote, or things that are coming up for you?
Well, the big thing is that we are actually, for the first time ever, going to have a booth at Spiel. I will not be there, but
nice.
But there are going to be several people from TMG representing us there. So if you are lucky enough and you're listening to this and you're heading to Essen, please stop by our booth and you can check out those new releases I talked about earlier. We will be at both PAX Unplugged and BGG Con. I will be at BGG Con. I will not be at PAX, but so definitely, and we will have a lot, or the Essen releases that get released there will obviously be at those convention spots as well. Though those games that I mentioned that are releasing at Essen, you can expect to see them on your local game store shelves or online at your local online retailers, shortly after Essen. So definitely, yeah. And if you want to reach out to me about anything at all, I'm easy to find.
Killer LinkedIn profile. Killer LinkedIn profile.
I don't look at LinkedIn, but you can reach me on Twitter as Undead Viking, or you can send me an email at lance@playtmg.com.
Awesome. And also make sure to check out the TMG podcast.
Yeah, please do. And if you have anything if you have a topic or a subject or a guest you'd love for me to have on, one of the nice things about doing this for 10 years is that I know everyone. So I can usually give people the sad panda face and get them to show up and record. So if there's somebody you wish I'd have a conversation with on the podcast or have a topic you want discussed, let me know and we'll work it into our schedule.
That's awesome, man.
And real quick, do you just want to plug one more time Downfall? October what?
October 17th, live on Kickstarter. Also, not this week, but next week we will have a very large discussion I had with John Clare talking about Downfall on the TMG podcast. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check that out.
Awesome. Well, I've been consuming your videos for a long time, Lance, so it was super awesome to have you on the show, and definitely enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, man.
I had a blast talking to you guys. Have me on again sometime, okay?
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you so much for putting up with us.
We stream these Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time at youtube.com/Epic Gaming Night. Make sure to hit up in chat. We've had tons of people chatting back and forth, talking about how much they love Lance and are excited about all the TMG games. So make sure to hit us up there. And we also want to say thank you to all of our amazing patrons for hooking us up on Patreon. If you want to check out what we're doing over there and help support Epic Gaming Night, make sure to hit up patreon.com/Epic Gaming Night. So until next time, you guys are awesome. We'll see you.
We love you long time. Long time.
Peace.